morning. I'm Rachel. Welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. This is our week 26 garden tour, and I can't say that a whole lot has changed, but that's kind of the point of these tours at this point, is to continue to remind you that even if your garden is growing slowly right now, that is completely normal. Kata prowling around near the compost pile. I don't normally show you guys my compost pile, but ever since I pulled out all of the summer stuff, it's been stacked pretty high. So as you can see from this far away, it's pretty hard to see all the green in the garden. And it looks like it's in a state of rest, it's quiet, but I promise there's a lot going on. A while back, when I took out the tomatoes, I had planted extra fava beans to fill in the gaps where I had missed as I was planting underneath the tomatoes and everything else that was here. And so those are just now finally starting to come up, even though the first round of fava beans sprouted in less than a week probably. And everything is germinating slower because cold. And then once it's up, it is growing slower because cold and lack of sunlight. You can see it's sunny out, but the number of hours of sunlight that we are getting every day is obviously much less. And because of that, the plants aren't able to make as much sugars and energy to grow from the amount of sunlight they're getting every day. So they're continuing to grow just slower. If you remember last week, I put in these onion starts from Dixondale Farms. And so far, I think a very minimal number of them have died. So most of them made it through the transplant process and are just starting to get themselves situated. We haven't had a lot of rain recently. Yesterday was actually the first rainy day in like 2 or 3 weeks probably. And this time of year I'm not watering because it's getting below freezing pretty often, and I don't want to accidentally leave the hose plugged into the faucet. But everything out here, it does fine without the water. And over the summer, I didn't actually really water much either. But after putting in these starts, or when you plant seeds, normally you have to water because you need that first little bit of soil to stay damp for them while they're getting established. And so the onion starts probably don't look as good as they could because ideally they would have gotten a lot more water than they have. But even though today is sunny, it looks like the rest of the week is going to be a little rainy. And so seeing as they've survived this long, I'm hoping that all of that rain will really help them solidify their root systems. Baby spinach is looking good. I've got another baby spinach over here. It may or may not have any extra leaves since you've seen it last. Same with these baby lettuces. There's one here. There's one here. And let's see. This one's a radish. You can see because of the initial leaves coming out there in that very telltale shape. Let's see. Oh, and I found another lettuce. I don't think I've been showing you guys. I didn't even see it at first because it kind of just blends in. And it was actually 2 lettuces. So I pulled one out and stuck it over here. And so far it hasn't died, but it's not as good looking as it was. Maybe in the summer it would have popped back already. But there's still hope for it. It's got one good leaf. So if we look at the newest row of brassicas and onions, from here you can't see anything, but if we get down right in here, you can start seeing them. They're still looking all right. Definitely going to be slow growing, and at this point it's quite a gamble whether or not they're going to get big enough to be useful for anything. Most of these are Brussels sprouts, but there are a few cabbages down the line. I think maybe the most noticeable thing this week is all the garlic coming up. You can see almost all of the garlic that I planted now coming up, and in the places where it's been up for a couple of weeks, You can just really see it as you're walking through the garden. No more having to worry about accidentally stepping on it. And so you can see what I've done a little more clearly now. So I have a Brussels sprout and a cabbage, I think. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 garlic there, and 1, 2, 3, 4 garlic here. And so they're kind of taking up these little triangles of space. So when this fills out in a big circle, these are not going to get in the way of the leaves, theoretically. Guess who still hasn't thinned out her turnips? This girl. I'm in luck because they grow so slowly right now. I have some time to mull it over and decide when's the best time to come out here and do it in between everything else I'm doing. Even though the garden takes a lot less time right now, I'm finding I'm really needing the break to work on other stuff and kind of catch up in the rest of my life. Doing the garden stuff during the summer is a lot. The garden that you saw me take care of took up so much time and energy. So it's nice to have this season where everything has kind of slowed down. So here's the progress on the carrots that you've been seeing that sprouted when they were supposed to. And these are brand new carrot sprouts. And that gives me hope that more of the extra carrots that I planted will eventually sprout. My rutabagas might be a little fatter than they were before. Definitely still not edible sized roots, but they're making progress. This one under here, not so much. Let's see what we can see under here. Oh yeah, that one's getting a little fatter. I just found an onion that's putting out a brand new leaf. That is a very good sign. You can see my peas haven't quite made it to the trellis yet. They're still trying though. We're getting very close. I think these have slowed down even more than everything else. You can see they're still making new growth. So they haven't completely stagnated. But at this point it will be a long time before I get to eat peas off of these. And so that's something to consider when you see days to maturity on a seed packet. What they really mean is days to maturity in ideal conditions. And so with those peas, if it had been ideal conditions, they would be all the way up the trellis by now and producing peas for me. But as you can see, they're still very tiny. And that, again, doesn't mean that anything is wrong with them. It's just the time of year and the cold and everything. So those days to harvest on packets, a lot of people get really upset when their stuff doesn't grow that fast. And maybe nobody told you that they're just estimating based on the most ideal conditions. So if nobody's ever told you that before, I hope that you can find it encouraging if you've had things that didn't grow quite as quickly as you thought that they would. I think for my area, my fall garden was kind of late, actually. In my area, I've seen some people, especially with broccolis and stuff, that are like twice the size of mine. And I think by the time it's starting to get this cold, really I should have had larger plants. And that's just part of me learning my area and learning these plants and figuring out, the best time to do everything, and also contending with the variable weather on top of everything. You can really see all the garlic back here. Starting to really come up. And again, you can see I've got little patches of garlic in between where these are starting to get bigger and fluff out, so that these are not getting in the way of those, even though they're fairly close by. Hello, Miss Kata. This trellis for now is still empty, And I think I'm going to be okay with that. I think it'll just be a really easy place to plant as soon as the weather warms up. I can get stuff started pretty quickly on it. So the raised bed looks still approximately the same. I think maybe the stevia has fully died since y'all last saw it. I harvested some seeds off of it, and I'm just going to leave it there because it being dead there isn't bothering anything. It's not in the way of me planting anything else because I'm planning on having it come back from its roots when it warms up. And additionally, if you didn't know, there are some bugs that will overwinter inside of dead plant stalks. And so where you can leave some of those in your garden, it's good because that way you are helping sustain the bug population. And that might not sound like a good thing at first, but there are plenty of beneficials that need to overwinter this way. And at the moment, I'm not going to say any out loud because I can't remember exactly which ones. But I know that creating this ecosystem in your garden is always going to be a helpful thing. And so instead of ditching all of these dead potted peppers, they're not bothering anything. They can sit around all winter. You know, they're a little ugly, but they're not hurting anything. Some of my cilantro babies are finally getting their first true leaves after, how many weeks? 3 weeks? Slow going here, but they're making progress. Lastly, a very quick update on the berry patch. If you haven't seen my last few garden tours, you might not have seen that I finally put in all my berry bushes right before the first frost came. And so now they have gone dormant and the leaves change this beautiful color. I can't wait to have a whole bush that turns that color. But for now, they're gonna not do all that much until it warms up in the spring. Kata's watching me from the porch. A little fluffed up queen. She's like, who, me? I wasn't watching you. Alrighty, and that is it for today. These fall winter garden tours are becoming short and sweet, but it's still so nice to be able to sit on my porch and look out at a garden that is very clearly alive. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I wish you all happy gardening.